Good morning, Nexus. Awesome. So this is part of an ongoing journey that we've been on since Nexus USA started. We had an amazing workshop yesterday, 35 people, and a dinner last night of 62 people with a very special guest that I'm honored to have learned from, a real master teacher. And what's unique about what's happened is that we started collaborating. We've had lots of co-hosts of these events. So the Futurism Lab, the IY Lab, the Regenerative Culture Lab, the Mental Health Lab, the Purpose Lab. We're all coming together around this message. So it really excites me, and I'm excited to introduce the next speaker. Besides the keynote, there will also be a meditation at 3:30, so I invite you to come to that. And basically, Thomas arrived yesterday at 7 a.m. and all the way from Tel Aviv. So we've got 15 minutes to hear his story, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about him. People call him the mystic in the marketplace. He's a systems thinker, and for 15 years, he's had experience working with people, thousands of people. He has a festival dedicated to him in Europe, and workshops. The festival is actually coming to the Mega Institute in 2018, and there's actually a new PhD program taking his work, studying it with the Academy of Inner Science. So I'm very, very grateful and honored that Thomas Hübl is with us today. And let's invite him to the stage. Thomas.
Good morning. So first of all, thank you, Nexus, to have me here and to trust me. I'm honored to speak here. And thank you, Brian. He put a lot of work into this moment. So, as Brian already said, my passion is human development. I've been working, I was originally a medical student. Then when I was 26, I left everything and I went on to a 4-year meditation retreat. And I had a very deep time and a very deep dive that wasn't always easy, but it taught me a lot about life, about mystical knowledge. When I came back, when I was 30, I started an organization that's called the Academy of Inner Science, where we are looking how inner science, like spiritual development, mystical development, and psychology, trauma work, and human development work go together. And ever since I met Brian, we had fantastic conversations about impact, about social impact. But the first question I want to ask is, why is that at all an issue? Why are we, after hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution, why are we asking those questions still? Why are we asking questions around education, healthy child education? Why are we asking questions about mental health? Why are we asking questions about social impact? Why isn't the system working anyway? And sometimes we might feel like this person, that there is a strong drive. I heard Nexus is about passion. So basically I discovered that we are talking about 3 major forces in human development. One is evolution. That's clear to all of us here, otherwise we wouldn't sit here, which means we all feel a passion, eros, we all feel a drive, and maybe we need some time to clarify our passion and purpose in life, but that's something that's pulsing through our veins, basically. But then we ask the question, there are many things that we know already since decades, climate change questions, human development questions, social questions, but we are still dealing with the friction and the sand in the engine. So, and I believe that sand in the engine consists out of 2 forces. One is habit. Habit is the part in us, it's a biological drive. Every one of us learned to walk, to speak, and we don't need to learn it every day again. That's a kind of a habit. But on the other hand, we create social systems, social structures, and behavioral habits, conditioned habits, that often feel like a block in our human development. And so habit, in many I work with many consultants or psychologists and therapists, and habit is something that we can train, that we can find change programs for, we can implement certain new tools in our organizations and companies, and we can develop systems through trainings. But then there is another force, I think, and that's a force that's not yet accounted for properly, and that's trauma. And I believe trauma, whenever we create a pressure onto trauma, we get a resistance back. So when we are not able to detect the level of traumatizations in teams, companies, social structures, the whole cultural body, I believe we actually want to go forward, but we will fight against the resistance of the system. And then there are two more forces, I believe, that are crucial. One is that there is a horizontal line, that's 2018, that's us here in the room. When we sit here, we create a culture. NEXUS became a place of belonging. We do things together, we network, we share a lot of creativity, we spark each other and we get excited and we develop new processes. So there is a level of belonging, and belonging is based on relation. And I believe that relational intelligence, RQ, relational intelligence, is actually an intelligence that we have to train. That's not given. Just being in the same room doesn't mean yet that we are related. So relating, a full body relating, is something that we need to train. And then the belonging or the cultural body has another force running through, that's becoming. I believe in NEXUS there's a lot of becoming energy. There's a lot of future drive. There's a lot of arrows to create new projects. And basically, in our heart, I believe, or when a child is healthily attached and we grow up in a healthy attachment process, then our heart can stay open and vulnerable. And then strength is the pulsation of becoming and belonging every moment. So I know that I belong, and I know that I have a future. And that sounds simple, but now we come back to the original question that I asked. Why are we dealing with so many difficulties on the way? Because we have many great ideas, but still we are running into resistances. And then when I did my work, and I started my work in Germany 15 or 17 years ago, the work that I do now, and then I actually came across what I'm going to talk about in the second part of my talk by accident. And I ran a lot of retreats, I worked with many individuals, but then I saw a similar process development over and over and over again, which means that a lot of collective, and you know, Germany, the recent German history, the Holocaust was a big impact, a very painful and difficult time, and life went on. And that's what we call in our work the past. The past for us is not what happened yesterday, but the past is the residue that we are dealing with today that stayed from past events. And actually, I believe that there is a force that we have to get to know better, that all of us, basically have been born into. And that force is the collective traumatization of our cultures. I believe that becoming and belonging in itself is very simple and fluid, but that we are dealing in many, many ways with an unseen ghost in the machine. And that unseen ghost in the machine is a cultural fog, it's an underlying, almost invisible power that affects all of us without us knowing. And so when I come back, trauma, I believe most of the time, is being created through inappropriate relation. And that's why what we do here, and what many other organizations do, is we create relational networks, which is the basis of being able to collaborate, but also is the basis of any kind of trauma-sensitive leadership, trauma-sensitive journalism, trauma-sensitive social impact, because that the unseen field is like, imagine we have been born into a world that is foggy, and that our nervous systems are used to drive in a foggy landscape. So when we drive our cars, we are used to the fact that we see obstacles or people crossing the street always when they're 10 meters ahead of us. But we could see them 300 yards in front of us, but the fog creates a numbness. And so I believe that we live in a time where technology created a global brain, a global village, and that we circulate a lot of information, but also a lot of trauma information, that I believe that many of us, when we are really honest, we don't have the capacity to absorb and digest the information that we get just through our mobile phones. So the news that we absorb, I think most of the time we will be able to rationally and cognitively absorb the information that we read, but actually some of this information is so overwhelming that we actually dissociate it when we read it. And that dissociation is a very important function in our nervous system, that we shut down a part that is overwhelmed emotionally, physically, mentally, is a very important part within our development. But it's also the part where we as global social witnesses are not able to witness the current world events. And then we end up very often in many more cognitive discussions, but actually without a felt sense of a connected witness. And the reason why I'm saying this, because trauma, this unseen field, is actually trauma. Everybody who knows a little bit about trauma knows that trauma has the tendency to repeat itself. So when trauma energy is not being taken care of, it will lead to repetitive experiences. And so I believe that we have the ability to respond. Like responsibility means that I am able to respond to you, to the world, to world events, to social injustice, to political injustice, to poverty. But before I respond, I need to be able to listen, because otherwise I react. So the difference in me between reactivity and responsiveness is a huge one. And that means that relation, I believe, my nervous system has basically three major parts. My nervous system has a part that takes care of my body perception. My nervous system has a part that takes care of my emotional perception. And my nervous system has a part that loves to think about philosophy, about science, about many other things. So a cognitive mental part. But authenticity and presence are composed out of an alignment of those three parts. And when we become more aware of the process of life, which means communication, work processes, collaboration, social processes, we see how often when we speak and communicate, we actually do not send out one information, so that my body, my emotions, and my mind say the same thing. Often we encounter a big fragmentation. And we are living I believe we are living in a social body, all of us together, like a collective body that is fragmented. And so I believe that there is some work that we need to do to raise the awareness that basically we are living in a fragmented world, that the world And we know this cognitively, but I believe there's a much deeper impact that basically our cities are built on kind of lakes of unconscious information that create all the time symptoms, and that we as cultures are not skilled yet enough, on the one hand, to read that many social and political, economical, and other issues are actually symptoms that the culture surfaces that are unseen collective trauma symptoms. And it's hard for us to recognize it because all of us, in one way or the other, have been born into such a scar. So on the flight here from Tel Aviv, I saw the new movie that Al Gore made about climate change, and I found it fascinating. And there you always see the blue planet. And I thought, isn't it interesting that the blue planet from the satellite looks very romantic and beautiful, but actually, in reality, that blue planet doesn't look like it. That our body as humanity and the planet together, because I think we are the planet, basically, that our body has lots of scars. So if we were to see the planet as it really looks like, we would see that the planet is full of scars, and that we have been born into scar tissues. Genetic sciences and epigenetics shows us that it's already proven that trauma is being passed on from one generation to the next. That we have proved that childhood trauma has severe health implications, that trauma is being passed on from one generation to the next through epigenetic changes. So we know already a lot, and I believe our responsibility is, first of all, to raise the awareness and to create relational networks that allow us to research, investigate, and find in ourselves the individual participation in that collective trauma lake that we have been born into. So I see the time is up, and thank you. For me, that's an important message, because I think there is a lot of hard work that we get into without recognizing that lake. And so thank you very much for listening to me, and I wish you a beautiful conference. Thank you.